Assalamu alaikum. I have been put in the position of waking you up after lunch, so I'm supposed to be loud and obnoxious, and that's part of my personality, so I think it's a good fit. It's great to be here, and I'm so inspired by the events of today. I'm so inspired by the speakers. I'm inspired by the startups. We truly have hit this inflection point. Jahan, where are you? If you're here, well done. You have managed to bring Faris here, and Faris, who I've been trying to bring for over a year. So great job with that. My timer has started, so let me start as well and figure out how to move my clicker. It's probably over there. Yes, that works. So hyperscaling and growing quickly, why is it important? I want to talk about that because I think we don't truly appreciate how important it is to grow rapidly and grow fast. It's not a luxury, it's a survival need today. We're in a market that is exploding. You are really in the middle of a perfect storm. I've been doing this since 2003. I started Rozee when the number of internet users in Pakistan was 2 million people. 2 million people in 2003. And people were on DSL, very few people had broadband, nobody had a smartphone, we were on Blackberries if we had anything at all. And it's been hard. I raised my first investment round in 2008, and it was the first time international funds invested here in Pakistan. It was tough. We've closed a few more rounds now, and it's becoming easier and easier and easier. And the market has never been in a better place. I've spoken to a lot of you outside, and a lot of investors as well, a lot of startups, investors saying, well, I did invest and it didn't work out, and startups aren't there, and there are not exits, and so people are nervous based on the experience of the last 5 years. But the next 5 years are going to be phenomenal, and I'm going to tell you why. And I've been seeing this since 2003, and I'm seeing the pace that everything is happening at. Everybody knows this. Our population is 208, based on a census that we just had. We are now the 5th largest nation in the world, overtaking Brazil. Good job, guys. Keep doing what you're doing. But there's something even more exciting. It's a population that's very young. It's a huge asset. So every year we're onboarding about 4 million people into the workforce. These are 4 million people who are starting to buy. They're buying their motorcycles. They're starting to spend. They're buying property, and you've seen how fast the property is going up. At the same time, there are challenges as well. The number of banked adults in Pakistan is at 15%. Iran is at 92%. It's a massive opportunity to bring people into the financial fold, which is going to happen, and it's happening very fast. Once that happens, you're seeing the payment ecosystem heat up. It's already heating up, and in the next 2 to 3 years, it's going to be a different place, and we're seeing it happen in front of us at a rapid speed. Smartphones. Everybody has a smartphone now. My cook has a smartphone. This was about, I think back in June, I was in bed and I woke up, opened my eyes, I grabbed my smartphone, and on my newsfeed I saw a recipe. It's a really nice looking thing. I watched the video, it's a good recipe. So I tagged my cook on the recipe because I was half asleep, and my cook has a Facebook account. I tagged him on it, I go to work, I forgot I did it, I came home and he had made the dish for me. It was just amazing. So these are the kind of things happening. The smartphone enablement is dramatic. 3G is growing super fast. We have one more amazing asset in the ecosystem, and that's Nadra, ID cards. And I don't know how many of you realize what a huge asset it is. It wasn't available in India. We can authenticate IDs online. We can build trust in the online ecosystem like no other emerging nation in the world, which is a huge asset, and we've used this really well. We've launched another startup that's doing well, Finja, and on that we've launched a wallet, and we're building bank accounts on the wallet in under a minute. We've reinvented the process of onboarding. You go to a bank and you try to open a bank account, it can take you up to 2 weeks. But with the tools that the ecosystem has today, you can build incredible applications on it. That's opportunity for you. Retail outlets, huge amount. E-commerce is growing very, very fast. There's some big news that I think we're all about to hear with Alibaba entering, and that's part of my story on why that's good news and a bad news for entrepreneurs and why you need to scale. So everything I'm talking about just shows you that a perfect storm has converged, and this is a time when things are taking off. From a payment ecosystem, there are more and more ways to pay online than ever before, and that's going to increase dramatically over the next year or two. The internet users who are enabled, who have smartphones, you're reaching people everywhere in the country, not only the rich people, it's going all the way down to the drivers, the cooks, and the rickshaw drivers now are using smartphones. Huge opportunity for loans. This is a time to disrupt the brick and mortar infrastructure. And you're in the right place for that right now. The world's fifth most populous nation. There was a Bloomberg article, I'm sure a lot of you saw this, but in terms of retail growth, it's the fastest growing retail market in the world. And the State Bank estimates that our unofficial gray market is at least as large as the actual white market. And that's a huge statement because there's tremendous opportunity there. We've got a middle class that's growing dramatically. The number of people who are buying a motorcycle today has increased 4x in the last 6 years, 4 times more. These are people who 5 years from now are going to go and buy cars. They're going to go buy a plot of land. That's also good news for everything that you're doing because these people are smartphone enabled. So all of this fantastic opportunity, it's exciting. There's so much opportunity going on. But I'll tell you something, this opportunity is going to evaporate very quickly. And that's why it's important, if you are a startup today, if you're launching a venture, you need to hyperscale. You need to grow incredibly quickly because you'll see opportunities in front of you and you'll think that you're the leader in a space, in a very small space, and then you will wake up in the morning and you'll find out that a bigger player has entered with more cash or money because they had more growth, and now you are irrelevant. You are irrelevant. And this is happening today, and there are lots of examples of that. So if you don't hyperscale, if you don't grow fast, you are at a huge kind of risk of even surviving. So if you don't dominate, you're going to perish. And if you just look at the kind of players that are here, with Kareem, they've raised over $500 million in investment. Uber has raised, I think, something like $11 billion. Flipkart has raised almost $8 billion. Amazon is a giant. Zomato in India has raised $250 million. What does this mean? It means that when they enter an ecosystem, they're going to suck the oxygen out, and if you haven't scaled, you're not going to survive, no matter how well you're doing. And we've seen this now in Pakistan, for example, in e-commerce. We have fantastic entrepreneurs who've built e-commerce platforms that were more efficient, but they haven't scaled fast enough. And now what's going to happen? You get a large player in, and because you haven't scaled and you weren't able to raise the capital, you're at risk of losing a business that was a leader in its space. You really need to hyperscale. So five key insights on hyperscaling. And now I'm talking to the startups who are early in their existence and who are just starting off. And these are things that I think I've learned the painful way. I've been doing this forever. So these are some war wounds I'm going to speak about right now. First insight, and I think this is very obvious, but in talking to many startups, I think this might not be as obvious to the maybe 60% of startups who are launching. Your business model must be built to scale from day one. The model must be built to scale. And what do I mean by that? I mean that if you have a lot of moving parts, if you have a brick and mortar elements, if to onboard a customer you have to have one human being, you're not going to be able to scale. You're not going to be able to reach size. So you have to make sure that your model is conducive to scale. And I'll give you a few examples. There was a startup I was talking to, and they were in the US, and they're trying to reinvent AngelList. How many of you have heard of AngelList? It's an investment platform. And I asked them, what are you doing that Angel isn't already doing? And they said, every single deal, we're going to have a team curate that deal and work with the investor and the founder. And I said, how are you going to scale this? Well, we're going to hire more people. And you do the math and you find out it falls apart. It becomes a small enterprise. It becomes a lifestyle organization, but they will not survive because they can't scale, and there's going to be a larger player who are going to eat them up. So make sure the business model is scale friendly on day one. Otherwise, if you can't scale, you will not be able to survive. Insight number 2, and this is probably less obvious, but believe me, I and quite a few others probably in the room have felt the pain of this. When you build your technology, you're in a rush to get your product out, which is good. But in that rush, you handle your product to handle 1,000 users, 100 users, 5,000 users. But if you're not engineered to scale, if your foundation isn't set, that you can quickly increment and upgrade your technology platform, your product, to scale to 1 million users or 2 million users, it's going to implode, and that means you're going to lose time in the market. I'll give you an example. There was a social networking site called Friendster. How many of you have heard of that? Good, so there's some older people in the room like me. Friendster predates Facebook, it predates MySpace. Friendster was everywhere in the US. Everyone was on Friendster. You would watch a movie and there would be a reference to it. It was a part of the social fabric. And Friendster grew very, very quickly. And at that time, they implemented the platform in Java and EJBs, and the technology stack at the time that was perceived as a high-end stack that the respectable programmers wouldn't go near an interpreted language like PHP. They were doing EJBs and they were way above the others. The reality is it didn't scale. So what would happen on Friendster is you would click a button and they had such fast growth, it would just spin for 5 minutes. The site became unusable. Then they raised a huge amount of investment from a well-known VC fund, and they said, we'll redo our whole technology stack. They switched to PHP. It took them 1 year to implement the technology stack. Meanwhile, a competitor came in, which was MySpace at the time, and it ate their lunch. And they went out of business. They had the VC funding, they had the traction, they had the name brand, everything was there. But their platform wasn't built to growth. So make sure you account for that. Third, and this is kind of almost the opposite statement I just made, but I'll explain it. When you launch your product, yes, you need to scale, but your first iteration shouldn't be scaling. Your first iteration, you need to handcraft your experiences, and you need to talk to your clients one by one. You need to walk through the entire flow and make sure it works. Make sure it works all the way through, because if you build something and you assume it's going to work and you start to hyperscale, it will implode. So validate your flow and your experience prior to hyperscaling. Fourth one, I have 3 minutes left. And this is going to be a controversial one, but I'm going to stand by this. Launch an imperfect product. Get to the market early. Don't wait till you get the product perfect and things aren't working. And I've got some friends in the room who are telling me, yeah, you've launched this product and it's got some bugs in it. Our wallet, which has grown tremendously fast, by the way, we had lots of bugs in SimSim. The first version of the app was horrendous. We got it out in the market early on, and it's really improved over time. But what it did, now we are sitting at about 128,000 wallets on it in a very short amount of time. We got approval from SBP, our state bank, to launch in July, and now we're at about 128,000, and the product has improved. So get an imperfect product out fast. Let the market tell you what the perfect product is. Believe me, you don't know. You'll spend a year trying to get the UI right and the feature set right and the workflow right. The customers, the moment they use it, they're going to tell you what kind of product you need. So throw your product out early and learn. And number 5, be as skilled as breaking plans as you are in making them. And one of the dangers that you're going to encounter when you first raise VC funding is all of a sudden you're operating in hyperscaling mode, in fast mode, and a VC comes in and you have to introduce tremendous amount of structure to your business and tremendous amount of structure into your plans, your trajectories. And it's a major shock to startups. So the first time you raise investment, you'll know exactly what I'm speaking about. You've got a 5-year plan, you've got the milestones. Sometimes investors say, well, based on the milestones, you'll get incremental amount of money, which means you are locked in to that plan, even if it's the wrong plan. So when you're working on a startup, the customers are telling you what they need, the market tells you what they need. You should be able to quickly break those plans and create new ones over and over again. And you should make sure that the investors you have on board are very conducive to that too. Because if they're not, and you get stuck on a rail and you're going the wrong way, it's going to end very, very badly. So there's a pivot that I think is very, very needed, especially in the context of what we are doing here in Pakistan. You should have an infinite supply of plan Bs. Be persistent, but don't try to climb up the same hill over and over again and say, I'm going to keep doing it because one day it'll work. Have an infinite supply of plan Bs in your pocket. Iterate very, very fast. So great, 55 seconds left. I managed to do it, and I woke you up, which was my job. Thank you very much for having me. To all of the fantastic investors that have flown all the way here, very glad to have you. This is the time. Things are going to change very fast. The next 2 years, from a consumer app online behavior perspective, I don't even think we can imagine how much things will change. And this is a time to invest in our country. Welcome to Pakistan, the land of opportunity. Thank you.